Hello. I can't hear you.
How are you doing?
Thank God. Praise the Lord. Excuse me. I'm doing well, but what everyone wants to know, all the crowd, everyone wants to know, how's the new job?
It's good.
So what's the new job? What is office, cubicle, open space, nemesis?
No cubicle, no nemesis for now. We'll see.
Okay, good.
We acquire one soon enough. But yeah, nothing going very similar to what I did in the past. But so that's cool. But also challenging in terms of working. It's more project based, so working on different projects. So that will be interesting. Just more more opportunities to learn about different things.
Okay, that's always fun.
But yeah, just really lots of initial stuff.
Okay, and do you know anyone there, or it's just everyone's new?
To me, yeah, everybody's new. I didn't know anybody.
Turn on a little more lights. Sorry, excuse me for a second. All right.
Here's another thing that people want to know.
Yeah.
And that's how did you move? When are you moving? What's going on?
Oh yeah, so I'm leaving this house in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I've been we've been slowly emptying stuff from the house. Even though I sold the house with everything in it, right? So all the furniture, the beds, it's all, they can keep it all. But there's still books and other things like that that we're taking. So and I have a lot of art, and unfortunately the new house actually doesn't have so many walls in a certain sense. It does have walls, but
it's completely open. It's it's
which I'm actually a little sad about, but I'm not having some close friends and the family come over and just take art because go somewhere. But I have been taking a lot of books that I'm not going to keep, or I've read, or I didn't like too much, but all different topics. And there's public library on the street, sort of. So I just and people always put their books, but I for the last 2 weeks, I'm been dumping books over there.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah.
I'm so I don't know if we could go back in the future. It'll be there was a blossoming of literature in Jerusalem, and in this year, but I was dropping a lot over there. So it's nice to see people, and every time I come, I see they're all gone. So they're being taken, and they're not they're not 101 dad joke books, right? There's but so that's nice. So yeah, so we're moving slowly but surely, moving to a new location, and then still in Jerusalem, and I hope after, I guess September time, I can move into the new house. I should get the keys for the new house in July, I hope, and then I have to start doing actual renovation work and things like that. There's it's limited what the contractor ends up giving you.
Cool.
But those are good things. Yes, that's very nice. I'm very happy about that. By the way, we were off for 2 weeks or 1 week, or with Yom Ha'atzmaut, or something.
We were off for 2 weeks, maybe, right?
I think so too.
I think
so too. And by the way, you don't have to know right now. Do you know what time you think you're going to be? What date? What scheduling wise is going to be easier for you, or not yet?
Not yet. It seems not yet. I think that around this time will still be good to me on days, but from now on, I think it might sometimes need to shift more, or it might be
to
more
rotate. Okay.
Just because it's in the middle of the day for me, so I can't always block it on the specific day. But yeah,
I will try and can be fairly flexible.
Yeah. I mean,
did I?
I would love to keep doing this, so I'm trying to kind of fit it in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you opened up the Mishnah. Can we just scroll back for a second and see
Yeah.
where we were? Right. We were talking about the crown of the kings and the table of the kings, and like what their metaphors, and how your crown, the crown of Torah, and your table is all preferable. Ultimately, how we're ultimately going to be faithful with our employer, being God, that He's going to give us what we deserve.
I'm gonna bring my magic book too.
Sure. Go ahead. Elias, quick. Elias, hello. I don't know you, but I'm listening to what you have over here. The Jews are human beings. The non-Jews are beasts and non-human beings. Oh, Baba Messiah. Yeah, okay. If a Jew male has intercourse with a 3-year-old Gentile girl, the girl must be executed. Okay. Excuse me for a second, Ben. I just see two comments. They're not really doesn't have to do with what we're learning about so much, and I'm not sure who it is, but I will.
I think this is somebody that's been interacting with Jacob through
Right.
through the comments, because he's doesn't have.
I will respond regardless, but just a small detour. One is that these things have to be read within context. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the rabbis have many tools that allow them to, I even don't want to go down that route. You have to read it inside context, but I would say that we're talking about a lot of things over here, like he needs to be executed, or we talk about if someone violates the Sabbath, he needs to be executed. And we hear very harsh words also in the Old Testament about certain punishments. However, if you read the Talmud in many places, it talks about how a murderous court would kill someone once every 70 years. And that's because there are so many requirements. 2 witnesses saw you and they told you, and they weren't related to each other, and they warned you and you recognized their warning. And they give an example of someone saying yes to all these things. I knew what I was doing. They warned me. I did it anyways. And then still they say, if he said yes to all these things, he must be crazy. And if he's crazy, we still can't kill him. Right. So these are, could be outdated ideas, number one. 2 could be ideas that have a more profound teaching that we need to learn from them. Just to move this conversation forward, Judaism, and while there's different, I'm sure there's different interpretations, like in Christianity and Islam, but in Judaism and all the sages and rabbis and sources that I'm aware of, that I heed to, that are part of the movement I'm part of, are all for peace, love, and understanding. We could see Muhammad as a prophet, peace be upon him. I have no problem seeing the Quran itself, even in some cases, as a divine book. We have rabbis that say so as well. Maimonides himself talks about how Muhammad and Jesus were path makers. When Muslims pray, Jews have to make sure they are standing a certain distance from them, because they're in the middle of praying to the divine, and we have to appreciate that relationship that they have. Yishmael obviously is the hearing God and God's voice in a certain sense, and that is extremely powerful name. And Yishmael himself holds a tremendous value to the world, and really letting all the world know about monotheism. And they've been doing a fantastic job in that. Obviously, I have my own quibbles with how things are done. And lastly, I'll say that ultimately the sons of Abraham must find a way to live together in peace. Inshallah. 2, that in the Quran, Hadith, and Sunnahs, you have interactions and conversations about the Yahud, and you have about Bnei Israel. And Yahud are people that are very much despised, and Bnei Israel are noble people. And so, to my Muslim brothers, I say, recognize that we, the Jews, are Bnei Israel. We have come back to our land, that the Quran also talks about and understands. And the book you referenced is our book. There's no tahrif. We didn't change it. But that's a very tough conversation to have. And I very much hope that just like the angel tells Hagar to return home to Abraham, I too hope that us and our Muslim brothers could find a way to talk together and learn from each other, as well as the Sufis, the mystics, and the Kabbalists clearly were drinking from the same pond. So, Elias, I don't know if that was the answer you thought you were going to get. Regardless, I hope all is well with you and your family. These very, very difficult times right now, and hopefully we will have peace, prosperity with all the sons of Abraham, inshallah. Okay. We lived in peace during, okay, then you came to build your abomination state of the lands. Nothing is forgotten. No one is forgiven, an eye for an eye. Well, that is one way to answer what I put forward. I would recommend, if I think you are who you are, I'd recommend asking Fawad, for example, if the things I just said are someone that you'd want to potentially have a conversation with, or this is the person you want to say something like, I'm going to take out your eye. Another example of a misinterpretation and low case resolution understanding of God's infinite will. But we will all have time to grow and learn. And again, I hope all is well, Elias. Okay. Sorry about that, Ben. I just felt that if there's a chance or an opportunity to potentially speak love and peace and understanding with the sons of Abraham, one should take the opportunity. All right. Al Tifakesh. Well, you want to take it out?
So this is what we did last time we met. So we actually.
Do you mind just telling me? Sorry for a second. Did I just sound condescending right now in any way? I just want to make sure I wasn't like being hurtful or
condescending. No, I don't think so. I mean, you answered it in a positive,
roundabout way. I mean,
roundabout way, which hopefully, I don't know if Elias would be open to that. But
shwaya, as they say, slowly. These things take time. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is what we read 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
So should we go to the next one?
Yeah. Let's take it away. I just want to remind myself a little.
Okay. This one is long. So.
This one is long. Okay, so let's get at it.
So we'll have to. Do we want to read all of it in once, or? Can we? Should we?
I'll read it, I guess, and I'll stop accordingly. גדולה תורה יותר מן הכהונה ומן המלכות, שהמלכות נקנית ב30 מעלות, והכהונה ב24, והתורה נקנית ב48 דברים, ואלו הן, בתלמוד, בשמיעת האוזן, בעריכת שפתיים, בבינת הלב, באימה, ביראה, בענווה, בשמחה, בטהרה, בשימוש חכמים, בדיבוק חברים, בפלפול התלמידים, ביישוב, במקרא, במשנה, במיעוט סחורה, במיעוט דרך ארץ, במיעוט תענוג, במיעוט שינה, במיעוט שיחה, במיעוט צחוק, בערך אפיים, בלב טוב ובאמונת חכמים, בקבלת הייסורין, המכיר את מקומו והשמח בחלקו, והעושה סייג לדבריו ואינו מחזיק טובה לעצמו, אוהב את המקום, אוהב את הבריות, אוהב את הצדקות, אוהב את המישרים, אוהב את התוכחות ומתרחק מן הכבוד, ולא מגיס ליבו בתלמודו, ואינו שמח בהוראה, נושא בעול עם חברו, ומכריע לכף זכות, ומעמידו על האמת ומעמידו על השלום, ומתיישב ליבו בתלמודו, שואל ומשיב, שומע ומוסיף, הלומד על מנת ללמד, והלומד על מנת לעשות, המחכים את רבו, ומכוון את שמועתו, והאומר דבר בשם אמרו, הלמדת כל האומר דבר בשם אמרו, מביא גאולה לעולם, שנאמר, ותאמר אסתר למלך בשם מרדכי. Wow, is a long one.
It's the first time that I also see like that the Hebrew is longer than the English. It's interesting.
Torah is greater than the priesthood or sovereignty, for sovereignty is acquired with 30 virtues and priesthood with 24, and the Torah is acquired with 48 qualities. These are study, listening, verbalizing, comprehension of heart, awe, fear, humility, joy, purity, serving the sages. companionship with one's contemporaries, debating with one's students, tranquility, study of the scriptures, study of the Mishnah, minimizing engagement in business, minimizing socialization, minimizing pleasure, minimizing sleep, minimizing talk, minimizing gaiety. I guess like simcha, sasan, ta'anug, slowness to anger, good-heartedness, faith in the sages, acceptance of suffering, knowing one's place, satisfaction with one's lot, qualifying one's words, not taking credit for yourself, likableness, love of God, love of humanity, love of charity, love of justice, love of rebuke, fleeing from honor, lack of arrogance in learning, reluctance to hand down rulings, participating in burden of one's fellow, judging him to the side of merit, correcting him, bringing him to a peaceful resolution of his disputes, deliberation and study, asking and answering, listening and illuminating, learning in order to teach, learning in order to observe, wishing one's teacher, wising one's teacher, saying something in the name of its speaker. Thus we have learned one who says something in the name of its speaker brings redemption to the world, as it is stated in Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordechai. Actually, the second time I'm mentioning Mordechai. I see Ups is here. Hello, Ups. I hope all is well. Little by little, slowly by slowly, unripe grape becomes as sweet as honey. Please God. Okay, so. גדולה תורה יותר מן הכהונה ומן המלכות, שהמלכות נקראת ב-30 מעלות, והכהונה ב-24, התורה נקראת ב-48. Right, so while we're talking about that, while they're both crowns are important, right, the crowns of priesthood and the crown of kingship, still, regardless, they're not as important as the crown of Torah. The way they are acquired, right? This is reference to, like in the book of Samuel, it talks about how the 30 elements you need to become a king. When it's talking about the 24 with the priesthood, there's all the things that they have to do, like the truma offering and the tithing that you do. So there's things that are related to the priest, and then there is also the Torah, right? So the Torah is saying is bought into these qualities, these 48 qualities that someone has to invest in, right? So unlike in kingship or in priesthood, which there is a lineage to it as well, right? The Torah is really open for everyone, right? So you have to really invest into it. And the more, and this is in a certain way going to be a condensed version of what we've been doing for the last like X months, which is going through all these things that we've expanded on a little more. But the more one invests, right, the greater the merit, and the quantity and the qualities also correspondingly rises and grows in greater quality, right? So the question we need to ask is, what could what is this investment? What does this investment look like? So here we're going to be told what they are. Eluhen, right? So these are the investments we were talking about. Talmud, right? So where the first one is the study, right? And study is just the first and foremost thing we need to do, which is the most basic blessing of, that we could have of just meriting the Torah, is to learn. And the only way we really have of gaining knowledge is by doing that process. Now, some people say that when you are learning, you shouldn't do so by yourself. As in you should study with a rabbi, right? You shouldn't just rely on yourself. But I believe this is more generally speaking talking about study for its own sake. And later on, they already talk about how we have to, appreciate the wise men and the rabbis. And just in general, learning is also, this is not talking about Talmud as in the Gemara specifically, more about the concept of education and learning and building curiosity, right? Getting to know the world, getting to know more about what's going on around you.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but so a few things. One is this going? Should we take into account that this might be going in a deliberate sequence, right?
What do you mean?
It's starting with study. A lot of places study is also, it's always the first thing, because that's how you load up your axioms, right?
Oh, you mean like the sequence within the 48?
Yeah.
I would say once you go through it, there's probably some sort of sequence, right? Because it's talking about, let's say, there's studying, listening, lips, right? There's like these physical attributes, and later on we start getting like a little more abstract. I would say it's more like there's groups,
right? Okay,
in a certain sense.
And the second thing is that what I know is that somebody told me that you have it's Sfirat HaOmer now, so you have people that are either going through the Sfirot, the Kabbalistic Sfirot, and the sequencing of that, which comes up to like 49. But some people also use this Mishnah as, again, this whole period of time is to enhance or refine yourself in anticipation of getting the Torah, receiving the Torah. So people use this, and every day, 48, 49, then they think about each one of them and each one for each day, and kind of think about how to improve or how to improve on that. So that's just like context that I thought it would be interesting.
Yes. So like you said, on these days, as we're getting close to Shavuot, right, to the receiving of the Torah, which is a day where we stay up all day and all night, and you just study. And it's a really, really magical time. But like you were mentioning, there are many people, my mother being one of them, who is very into, at the end of every night when she recites the counting of the Omer, she compares it to the Kabbalistic sequence, right? And then she does like a little teaching on like, what that specifically is. And that's, so this whole sequence of 48 things that we have, right? These are attributes that, one should be working on at all times, but this is a great time to sit down and actually think about these things. So in honor of the acceptance of the Torah coming up soon, we will go through these in such a manner. But thank you for illuminating us, and hence the beard.
Yep.
I haven't shaved, right? I mean, even though I go back and forth with my beard, but still, nevertheless. Okay. Next on the docket for us was B'Shmiat HaOzen, right? Listen. So here, right, so we have to be listening, obviously, very attentively, and not only listen to what the leader, rabbi, sage is saying, but also the opinion of a friend. And also in our personal study, we also need to listen to what we ourselves have said in the past, and to examine what we've said to determine if we were correct. It could be that I'm going around talking, and then I don't stop and be like, wait, what did I just actually say? Right. And maybe it's actually more profound than I thought, or maybe I'm actually talking nonsense. Right. So one has to be very attentive to that. And also, obviously, this, leads into just general discernment, right? But that has to do with discerning things also from what you're hearing, but also, again, it has to do with who you're listening to, and that it also involves listening to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might have self-doubt, like, who am I to even speak, or who am I even to? I'm not gonna self-check myself because I know I'm like a fool, right? But the answer is like, no, you might have many things to say. Barichat sfatayim. In English, this is in verbalizing. So, barichat sfatayim. So, right, verbalizing, articulation, right, of the lips. Specifically, here they're using the term sfatayim, and it's not enough in a sense to using the fact that they're using the word lips. It's as if to say it's not enough to just see and absorb with your eyes. Right? Like there needs to be more than that, right? The Torah is a way of life, right? So it emerges from a person outwardly, right? And through the words I use, also my actions, obviously, but also the speech of my mouth itself. 1 second. My screen is all getting fuzzy. Oh, it stopped. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, this makes sense also when I think about how in the Tanya, it talks about the thought, speech, and action, and how doing different dynamics with that, but also, and those are the garments of the soul, and how you can use all of those to elevate your relationship or to extend or to bring about your soul, to expose it to the world or to harness the world. So I mean, use your speech.
The levushim pnimiim that you wear inside that the Tanya talks about, or really creating order of your thoughts with your words in a certain sense, right? So I'm taking just like chaos, tohu vavohu, right? And by creating a sequence like the 7 days of creation and God speaking and doing things, I also, by creating a sequence in my head, I am taking chaos, creating order by using my words, by using creation in a certain sense, and then allowing that to manifest. Now, how amazing would it be if I could fully be integrated from my thoughts to my body and my practices, like, right? Who knows what we could do? Such is the tzaddik. Bebinat halev, comprehension of the heart, right? So here too, it's an understanding of the heart, comprehension of the heart, to understand and maybe even to feel a little, right? The details of the matters of what you're actually dealing with, right? So it's a deep level of understanding, and it's a level of really fully, in a certain sense, like emotionally also understanding all the levels of the argument as well. Many times we could intellectually be there, but not realize, who I'm talking to, right? Like, this is the right sequence to say right now, but you're also talking to like an abused woman right now. So maybe don't use those literal terms because XYZ, right? Being sensitive to those things. But to be sensitive to those things is not just being like tactful. It's more about, let's say, in its true form, tactful is being compassionate to all things around you and really understanding how they all connect.
Right. So it's the beginning of like, if we think about like the chokhmah bina dat, like the bina is the understanding of starting to understand the concept and applying it a little bit more to, like you said, your context and like the relevance to you specifically and the people around you. Yeah. Trying to see if there's anything here too.
Sure. One day, my achievement will be one day if you look in the magic book and it says like see Chezi.
Yeah, right. It could. Citing
no. Katanti.
See Elkut Spira.
Right, see Elkut Spira. Okay, so we spoke about the heart as well, and ube'ema, right? And I like that in English it says over here awe, because well, it's be'ema, be'ira, both of them I would even say. Awe and fear really could go together. So, right, so this awe and reverence, right? So it's not about, like we said, it's not about the fear of a person that I'm not facing like a giant like gorilla or something like that, right? I'm not nervous about it in that way. It's more about the appreciation of a person who's exposed to the grand project that like impacts the entire world in every moment, right? And it's realizing that he, the individual, or us, you, are being called to partake in it, right? And to merit the Torah is, and it's, you want to be cherishing this as well, this experience. And this goes back to our conversation that we've had about Modeh Ani, right? About once you realize, the Carl Sagan, the small little speck of dust, right? It's the little blue dot, and like everything's happening on that little blue dot in space. You realize, wow, like, and yet God wants to have a conversation with me. So the first thing is not going to be me thinking, I think, therefore I am, starting with an I. It's going to be Modeh Ani, right? Thankful am I. But it first starts with being thankful because I'm I'm in such awe and reverence of the experience of consciousness and who I am and the context I'm in. Ba'anava, right? So in humility, I'm assuming that's what it is. Yes, in humility. So in humility is like the humble person, right? Who knows he doesn't know everything, and his wisdom is not, doesn't cause him to have this inflated ego, this huge self-esteem. And he doesn't get too full of himself where he gets disconnected from the source of his wisdom, right? Which is ultimately God, right? And being humble allows you to consider new ideas, right? in a certain sense, God, by retracting, by the tzimtzum, by allowing himself to create room for the other, right? There's humbling himself in a certain sense, right? So can God create a rock that he can't pick up? Like he has humbled himself enough to allow something like that to happen in a certain sense, or he allowed there to be space for us. So we in turn need to also retract in ourselves and allow room for the other as well, or for new ideas nonetheless. And as God rebukes or challenges Job and says, "Where were you when I created the universe?" Right? So like have a little, slow your roll in a certain sense when you're complaining. I get it that you're in pain and I get all those things, but you can't even fathom, the grander scheme of things in a certain sense. Right? So it's important to be humble.
And it echoes also the conversation with Jonah about the city that is about to be demolished, and also that Jonah doesn't seem to care too much about, and the little plant that was shading him, and then God killing that plant, and then Jonah saying, "Oh, this is terrible."
Right.
And God telling you, like, if you
care
had
about this plant for like one day, right? The kikayon. Exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so. And one needs to really be humble and really recognize that. I mean, and there's he's on a journey, Jonah, right? There's a certain sense where he recognizes it when he's on the boat, and he says, like, I'm the problem. Like, you guys throw me off. Like, I realize that, but yes, he's on his own journey in a certain sense.
So to echo what you were saying, first of all, Lechem Shamayim here, the commentator says that this is the most significant of qualities, especially crucial for acquiring Torah, and because this is the quality that defined Moses, yeah. And it makes sense, again, to echo what you said in terms of like how we are in one way we're saying that Torah is synonymous with the will of God and has all this power. So somebody that's associate themselves with Torah,
right?
It's incumbent on them to make sure that they're humble enough to not put themselves on the level of God himself, right? So like if you associate yourself with the Torah, so that it requires that kind of humility to understand your place
and to recognize, like we said, to recognize the source.
Yep.
Right, and that in theory should keep you in check at all times. Can you scroll down on your screen a little?
Yes.
So let's bring Basimcha to the top over there. I guess we have a problem over here because the English doesn't. It's not tracking with the Hebrew because the Hebrew is much longer over here. Okay, so we're all the way back there with joy, right? Basimcha. Okay, so obviously, when a person's happy, his heart is opening to learning the Torah or studying. We know this also, like just in general, having that right attitude is preferred, and what it's sort of it's a feedback loop, right? You come in happy, which means you'll study well, and if you study well, that means the divine presence will be with you, and that of course will make you happy, right? So there's it'll be continuous. So obviously you want to come in and generally have a happy mode of being. There's much to say about happiness in general, but maybe for another time. But tehara, right, in purity, right? So the Torah is not a natural science. I mean, we could get into a whole other conversation of what the Torah has to teach us with regards to like psychology, and is that a science? But generally speaking, it's not a natural science, right? But it's more a sacred wisdom, right? And its acquisition is in a certain way influenced by the spiritual condition that you're in. And you can't be in an elevated spiritual condition if you're not pure or clean. Right. So if you want in a certain way the light to flow smoothly through the Torah conduits to you yourself have to be a pure conduit. Right. So your state of mind, your state of being, even what you're wearing and the clothing you have on. So all of it has to be, again, this oriented package from your mindset, what you're hearing, what you're listening to, the smells that are around you. So these are things that you really want to take into consideration when you want to be in this pure state. I'm currently reading Judaism is about love, and this is very nicely dovetails. Well, that's great. I hope you are doing well and the family is doing well through your hard times, sir. And Christian Baxter, it's good to see you, sir. Feel free to join if you'd like, or listen in the peanut gallery and comment as you will. Any questions or notes in the magic book about purity?
No, purity is pretty simple. It says Midrash Shmuel says because of its holiness, the Torah cannot dwell in an impure place. And again, like you mentioned it's like there's a spiritual. It's kind of like the leprosy that is talked about in the Bible. It's like a different kind of melody that we perceive as the natural leprosy. Whatever it is.
I mean, just a small little divergence with regards to like just about purity, which is I spoke about this a little on last week's weekly review about the priests and the Kohens. They're really, they don't marry a divorced woman or a widower. They can't deal with a dead body if they see it on the road, which obviously is a commandment to do, right? You must bury a body if you see it. Yet the priest can't. A low-level priest, if it sees one of his siblings or one of his close family-related relatives, he can. The high priest can't either. And the concept is, and this relates to the purity, which is for him to be the conduit connecting the divine and the people of Israel together, that concept needs to be removed and untouched by the world's impurities, which is marriages that haven't worked out, death. This is a strong life force, but nevertheless, this is one that you ideally don't want to connect to. And impure doesn't mean bad. Specifically, I'm just going to say one more note about this, which is when Abraham gives the gifts to the concubine's sons, gives the gifts to the concubine's sons, and the reference is from east to east, like a far east, and there's like a whole teaching about like the Vadas that were being taught at that time. But either way, there is a teaching that says he gave the concubine sons the names of impurity, and he gave them different sequences to use to connect to God. For all intents and purposes, right now we'll call them, let's say, different mantras. Okay, and whether that's happening in Kundalini yoga or things like that, that is real, and one could connect to the divine through that. The reason that's impure is because for the Jewish people, that is not the sequence, the ideal sequence, so to speak. And that's why we want to make sure as the chimney cleaners for the rest of the world, we want to make sure that the conduits are as pure as possible. So that doesn't mean everyone has to do that, but at some point, someone has to clean the chimney. So just going back to that concept. Okay. So we talked about purity and serving the sages. Beshimush chachamim. Okay, so this is obviously servicing the wise. Learning Torah does not end, obviously, with just learning it from a book. Ultimately, it involves learning from connecting and honoring living Torah scrolls, right? People that are actually embodying this Torah. So, when we are, when we hear the people online even talk and have these discussions, what we're looking for is actually to see people that are embodying in a certain sense that we could see when we hear them speak, we're hearing someone that is aligned in this way. How even more so when we speak about touching grass or getting out there and doing it in the real world, that's actually when the rubber hits the road, right? And you also want to see that. You want to witness how that actually look, because I could read it in the book, I could hear you explain it in the most profound way, but now can I actually see it happening on the ground? Can you show me what respecting one's father and mother actually looks like? Do you? And we find just like in let's say in the culture today about like when the divorce rates are sky high in secular communities specifically, the concept of till death do you part, right? What does that mean when that's embodied, or in sickness and in health? What does that actually look like, and how quickly people feel like, I can't actually handle this? So you actually want to see this being embodied and done in real life. Yeah.
So I'm looking for the word I can't find it, so I'm just going to talk around it. But I mean, basically what we're talking about here, when it says serving the sages, and how it says also here in the magic book, well, in Brachot, actually, in the Talmud, it speaks about how serving them is like being around them, being able to be around them. Like you said, like seeing them, embodying it more than learning it.
Sleeping under his bed in some crazy stories.
Yeah. So, I mean, like when I was doing film stuff, one way that you can learn, obviously, so you can go and learn about about the methods of cinematography, to analyze scripts, whatever. You can do all those kind of things, but you can also go in a set and shadow the director, shadow the cinematographer.
That's the word, shadow.
Shadow, yeah. There's another word for, especially in trade, like if you're a plumber and stuff like that. It's not a fellowship.
You could be an apprentice, but I'm saying
apprenticeship.
But shadowing is different. I want to just tack on to what you're saying, because I saw this interesting interview with Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast came and said that the only way he managed to like grow his business is he realized, I need another me, and the only way I'm going to have another me is I need someone to shadow me. So he had this guy come and he said, like, you don't need to do anything. You just need to sit and see everything I do. And at some point, you're going to catch on to the pattern of how I'm talking, how I'm thinking about this stuff. And he had, for a whole year, he had a guy just with him all the time, just like shadowing him. And then after that year, he's like, now I can have you do things, and you know how I do things. It's more than just like, I have an idea to do things. I want things done my way specifically. So that's to an extreme, but the extreme example the Talmud gives is one of the rabbis would sleep under his rabbi's bed, right? So he could see how he does everything. And one of the cases also, he sees how this rabbi would let his mother step on his back to get onto her bed, and she would spit in his face and he wouldn't say anything, right? So this is extreme cases of, I remember my mom would say this to me. If I would talk back to her, she'd be like, even if I spit in your face, I'm like, all right, yes, I know, you're in charge. I can't say anything. My mom loved me very much, and she never spit in my face, thank God. So no one needs to take it that way. Before we move on, I'm just going to say to our friend over here that about my father's having a rough time grieving for my mother. So I mentioned Job earlier on, and I'm just going to say that two things. One, Maimonides actually says that Eliphaz which are one of Job's friends, was correct with the advice he gave Job. However, it doesn't matter, because at the state Job was, he's not supposed to be hearing advice at that point. He's supposed to be mourning. And we were talking about how there's a time and place to give advice, and there's a time where you need to allow someone deal with the tension of someone just left this world. What does that mean? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for those personal memories and our connection? So there needs to be a place for grieving. And it's so important that wisdom, that lesson is so important, that all are supposed to stand for the rabbi. When a rabbi goes into the house of the mourner, all stand besides the mourner. The mourner doesn't stand, because at that moment, he is the wisest of all, because even the rabbi is not going through that experience. And during that experience, he is the only one that could be thinking about that fully. So he is the wise one at the time, because he is fully engulfed in that process. So my wishes to you is that you as a family maintain your resilience and stick together and be the support. Emulate the support your father has always been to you, and be that for him, number one. And by doing that, by him seeing that you guys are there for him, please God, that will, give him the strength he needs. Second of all, that just throughout this journey, I hope he finds peace and tranquility. And I wish you, again, much, much blessings. And please God, he will one day, not soon, please God, will reunite with your mother in glorious fashion and bask in the radiance of the Almighty. Okay, we are in B'Shimush Chaverim, Bedibuk Chaverim. This is serving the sages, companionship with one's contemporaries. Okay, so we also want to it's basically chilling, right? Make sure you're hanging out now. So it's didactic is really making sure you are noticing, is being very having attention to detail in a certain sense. And
the book.
B'dibuk chaverim, but I think can you check in your book if there's a reading of didactic?
Let's see what we got here. The book in my book. Let's see.
Am I making this up right now, or is there a teaching of this? B'dikduk.
I see people asking this question. So
yes, this is one of those cases where it's two different options. Read two different ways. Almost embarrassed my grandfather. Okay.
Yeah.
So bedibuk covering clinging to, being close with one's friend, which is that's sort of like the simple reading, or bedikduk, which means again being very attentive to one's friends. This has to do with the considerations of the friends that you have, right? So you want to learn in a group, and you want to hear how your friends precisely interpret the written word, right? So it's basically telling you to be in a Bible study and really be very attentive to what your friends are saying, because they may focus or stress something that you have never noticed before, right? You have read this verse multiple times, and you might be out there thinking, I just want to hear it from the wise man or from the sage. But the answer is no. Be very specific and mindful when your friends are speaking. Number two, be very specific and mindful with the type of friends you have, right? By the kind of companionship you have around you. And going back to the first version we have, or the version we have over here right in front of us, bedibuk. You see, I read it into it even. Bedibuk, which is really just making sure you have close friends. Just don't be alone, virtually not alone, and actually physically not alone.
Yeah, there's also an interesting commentary on this that I like from Lechem Shamayim, that he says there is an element of learning that can only occur in the casual atmosphere of friendship and cannot occur in the reverential environment of the teacher-student relationship.
Ooh, I like that a lot. That's really nice, right? So there's like the sense that, this relates, and I can't remember if we read over here something about laughter, but this relates sort of into the laughter sort of mode, which is there are times where you need to sort of break down the boundaries, be in more of a chaotic sort of space. I don't want to say just hanging out with a friend is more chaotic, but let's say it's less rigid. And because of that, it potentially allows for more flow to happen. Obviously there's risks, right? With those kind of systems as well. But that's, I like
and having that balance of having both relationships, both dynamics.
Yeah.
Will be helpful.
That was a good one. Let me just write that down for a second. Who said that?
Lechem Shamayim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, where were we? B'dibuk chaverim, and the next is bepilpul hatalmidim. Debating with one's students. Okay, so this also extremely important as well, right? So this is in the as we say, like, iron sharpens iron, right? And like in the sharp reasoning of the students, it's the best kind of learning with each other in a certain sense. And again, you're sort of fixed to your ways in a certain way of thinking. And when a new student, in a certain sense, encounters the matter, they ask new questions, they offer different suggestions, and they bring renewal to the rabbi himself, to the teacher himself. Rabbi Kook famously said about, he asked one of his great students, the Nazir, the Nazarite, a modern day Nazarite, well, he's dead now, but back in the day, Nazarite, to sort of compose a lot of his writings. And he put it together and he presented it to the rabbi, and the rabbi read it and said, like, you're teaching me my own Torah in a certain sense, like hearing what you understood from me is, illuminating. And just in reference to TLC, that's also something that happens. People sometimes feel like, there's too much talk about TLC, or there's too much talk about, let's say, this topic. Part of it, if it's coming from a good place, is this renewal, is these new suggestions, right? When you hear 6 new people suddenly come into the scene, you do want to ask them those questions again, because you want to see how they see it. Specifically, when you are aware that the other person's perspective, right? It's more people touching the elephant, so to speak. Yeah. So we're interested in that. I would say Jacob would say, like, we should have a lower threshold of tolerance for people that are talking nonsense. Mm-hmm. I would argue we need to listen for a little before we know it's nonsense, but maybe he'll say, no, if they say they're Zionists, they're talking nonsense. But okay, so people Tedim Beyeshuv.
We also have, just to make sure that we're on time, we have like about 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so this is a long one. We'll continue it. We'll continue next week. That's fine. So in tranquility, right? So in tranquility, being settled, being in a settled mind, right? But Yeshuv Hadat is a term we use, a settled mind.
Yeshuv Hadat, yeah.
A cluttered mind, right, has really no space for you to incorporate proper knowledge, orderly knowledge, right? So this goes back to what we said earlier about the words you use. They create from chaos, they create order in your head. This also relates to Jordan Peterson's, clean your room in a certain sense. That's already happening within your room, but then it's also metaphorical in a certain sense, which is before you go around even saving the world or even cleaning your room, maybe start by being settled, right? Being in this tranquil space, which allows you to catch a breather for a moment, think, then act, right? So dedicating time really for inner calm and will ultimately aid in the internalization of learning, right?
So this relates to
for Zen meditation sitting, right? If in order it's being used to allow you to then learn and accept, learn and understand and receive proper knowledge.
Yeah, this relates to the joy, simcha, that we talked about how your state can interfere with your ability to grasp, to learn. So just like simcha, also calmness, being settled can, if you are not settled in your mind, then you go different places and you can grasp the things that you need to grasp. And also somebody says here, you can take it literally in terms of being seated. Like if you want to learn something, it's hard to do it when you're walking around doing other things. You need to, if you really want to grasp something, sitting down and acting.
It would depend like what kind of learning you're doing, right? Because there's like experiential learning and then what you want to be out there. But there is another opinion that says B'yeshuv means when it's settled, as in you could learn things that are not settled. Mm-hmm. But when you're teaching, you should be teaching settled stuff already. As in, don't be teaching your students, taking them into the black hole and be like, guess what? We don't know any of this information over here. Like that can be very intimidating. Instead, come in and teach them things that have been settled. And then, of course, there are many, many avenues to have the debate, the discussion, the disagreements. But that is sort of and one could also be learning during that process, but that wouldn't necessarily be like I'm giving a class. And when I'm giving a class, I should be doing so on settled stuff, even though I prefer the two first versions we gave. And we'll just end on Bemikra, right? Bemikra, and in English, this is the study of the scriptures. It's something that we do here often. So this is just a plug for the scriptures, right? So in the scriptures, in the Tanakh, the 24 books, filled with the treasures of life, ultimately, right? So the word of Hashem, the word of God, that came directly from him or comes directly from him through the prophets, right? This is the foundation of all. And this is really ultimately the claim of the Jews at the end of the day is that we still have the most proper way of understanding the prophetic meaning in text, right? There's a sense where the whole the Kabbalah teaching, the Zohar talk and interpretations of the Tanakh, the Bible, that is in a certain sense how the prophets understood the text and when they were talking about, right? So when we say the students of the prophets went to collect lights, right? So in a certain sense, that means they went to, realize, you could look at that just as scripture, or you could understand that from a Kabbalistic understanding. There's a profound meaning of how there's a profound understanding of how they are experiencing life, understanding what the temple means, what Israel means. So
right, and before we even go to the Kabbalah, I mean, like there's Mikra and Mishnah, so it mentions like he can't have the written law without the oral law.
My point about Kabbalah is just that our tradition, in some rabbis say that Kabbalah is how the prophets understood the Torah. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm saying that's the whole idea. Kabbalah is giving something in transmission. So we're saying that is the transmission of their understanding, right? So we talk about
prophetic,
that's a whole other conversation. Mm-hmm. Either way, buddy, take care. Enjoy the new job.
Thank you.
We will continue, and next week you let me know when what day makes sense, and we'll schmooze. You right?
Sounds good.
You talk, man.
Thank you, Chezi.
I'm going to stay on for just a few more minutes, 4 minutes, to be precise. And my wife and I need a shop for some lighting. But it was nice to have you guys all here. Let's see if there's any comments over here. Conversation craft. It's about orientation. Hey, Hive Mind. Hey, David. The ethics of our fathers. Right. So this is in a certain sense why I love the TLC so much, because, and I really hope this doesn't sound again condescending in any way. Did I leave a link, by the way? Yeah, I did leave a link. And I mentioned this many times, like you could just see what I was reading over here, all this text about proper orientation, being mindful, discernment, learning from others. Like this is all very much what's happening in the TLC right now. And it's just so amazing. It's amazing to see 1,000-year-old ethics, operating systems, programming, psychotechnologies, having their own revival, reincarnation, so to speak, within us. And returning back to the source, in a certain sense, after modernity and technology, and definitely after COVID, when we see like what the scientists promised, maybe, and that's why there's a revival in Orthodoxy as well, right? People want to return to the source, and that's why one has to be careful. Right, one has to be careful with regards to what's that source. This goes back to me talking about the Kabbalah being what we believe the prophets understood in a certain sense. And we want to make sure we're understanding correctly. However, we don't necessarily have to quibble at all time about the details if there's a larger picture we agree about, right? The prophets of Israel weren't very big on talking to the nations of the world about idol worship. Rather, they were talking about proper behavior. Ultimately, all will realize his name is one. And I hope, in a certain way, I don't even have to go there. Forget that. Lightning for interior design. Yes, lighting for my new home. I have to actually pick out lights. Hazy, I think what you're talking about with the program on Luke's stream and how is about Peterson's going into the belly of the whale to bring back to life and the wisdom of the fathers. Voice, Hazy. What's voice? I should use my voice. Or you're talking about how you wrote Hezi and you're saying Chezi. I got you. That's how you voice it. Understood. Or as Christian calls me, Chezi. A lot of the programming, and I'll end at this point because it's too much to get into, but I recommend people read a little of his work of Eric Neumann, Carl Jung's prized student. But he talks a lot about how there's the great mother, the devouring mother, and the father, how he talks about how the ancient cultures, this has to do both psychologically, sort of how these are stages that happen in the subconscious and conscious, in the subconscious, and as well how this actually actualizes in the real world, relating to, like, the hero's journey in Judaism specifically. Again, that would be the tzaddik, the righteous one would be the hero, and how we, through the introduction of the Tetragrammaton and the law and the logical, we sort of removed ourselves from the mother, from the Ouroboros, the never-ending cycle, the snake eating itself in a certain way, and we managed to emerge from that. That's also, in a certain sense, fighting the dragon, slaying the dragon, and then we had a more logical understanding and ritualized version, systematized version. However, if that goes too astray, it also goes wrong, and there has to be a return back to the mother, and he sequences it with relation to the land itself. And one could go into that, but there's a lot to say about that, and I might have even butchered it by just trying to do it very quickly right now. But it relates to what David was talking about as well, like as far as to the sources of these programs, and from like a psychological level as well. And it was great to meet David yesterday. David runs a great Bible study, which if I'm lucky, I get to lurk on. And that's really, really recommended as well. All right, people. Gotta go pick some lights. You know what I mean? We were talking about God, talking about the most important things in the world. And now I need to see, is it brass? Is it chrome? I don't know. Materials, things, nonsense, lies. Okay, catch you guys later.